to Retro Groove. Enjoy your voyage. Retro Groove. Retro Groove. Retro Groove.
Howdy and welcome to Retro Groove. I'm Adam C.
And I'm Liam D.
And this is a podcast where we talk about music that stands the test of time, the albums and artists that have shaped and reshaped the sonic landscape, as well as covering new music from those artists. And speaking of new music from those artists, we have a lot of new music to talk about. I actually can't remember in recent memory a time where we had so much new music from well-established artists to wade through, and I'm really excited about it. But on side B, we are going to talk about Spoon. And I was just talking to Liam about this, but Spoon is definitely in my top 5 favorite bands of all time, possibly in my top 3. Absolutely one of my desert island groups as far as having the whole discography. And we're hot off the tail of a brand new song being released and a new album being announced forthcoming in February of next year. But let's talk a little bit about what we've been listening to and albums that we may have purchased recently. Liam, let's start with you. What have you been listening to recently?
Well, I think I'm going to have to, unfortunately, start things off a little heavy, just to be honest and upfront with everybody.
That's fine.
Here. So I've been listening to a lot of Manchester Orchestra, especially the last album, which I've talked about on here a bunch before.
Yeah, you introduced me to it. It's great stuff.
So unfortunately, since my wife and I got together and she moved in with me back in 2007, we adopted a cat. The cat just about 15 years old. We unfortunately she got sick and we had to, you could tell it was coming.
Yeah.
We just kind of saw it coming, had to put her down. And we were talking in the Discord about like, when you're in the midst of something exciting, something sad, something moving, something big, you know in that moment that the music that you're listening to could easily be stamped or imprinted with those emotions and that experience. And so I definitely
100%.
had a thing where I was like, what should I listen to as I'm going through this? Because music is something that I lean on heavily.
Oh, absolutely.
When it comes to this sort of thing. And so I bought the tickets months ago. My wife and I and another couple were going to go into the city and see Manchester Orchestra. And once we kind of got the word from the vet, things weren't looking so great. I said to my wife, I was like, look, you chill here, spend your time with your cat. I'm going to go into the city. I'll meet up with our friends. They'll understand. But I need to do this. You need to do that. And so she stayed here. I kicked into the city and cried about a cat at a Manchester Orchestra show.
No, man, they're like family. It's
legit.
No shame, man. It's that's serious business.
Yeah, but I can't remember the last time I cried at a concert to begin with, and I definitely had that self-awareness in the moment where I was like, I'm being moved because I'm seeing this band that I love so much, and also the music is gorgeous, and also I'm going through this and it's all melding into one thing.
Yep.
So there's been a bunch of that. And what's really nice, my wife likes them too. She hadn't spent much time with this album, and so we've been driving around listening to a lot. It's been a very cathartic thing for us. So it's cool. It's ultimately it's fine. And I'll also say another thing, and something I just purchased this week, which felt a little bit like an impulse buy, but not maybe not. Is the soundtrack to this game Spiritfarer, which is a beautiful indie game that also deals with death. So I have been playing this game for about a month now, on and off, and I was sitting in my car at the beach in a storm playing this game on my Switch, and had the music kind of filling up the car, and then I saw on a tweet that the vinyl was going live or something, and I'm like, I mean, I have to have
Had
this
to.
now. Like, I just
It was the right.
I have to
It was
have
the right
this.
time.
Everything like lined up for that. Yeah. So that game is gorgeous. Music's gorgeous. I'm excited to get that. It seems like one of those things that it's a pre-order, and who knows when it's actually going to get printed and sent out.
Right.
But I'm excited about that. I don't think I talked about it on the last episode. But if I did, I'll stop. But I went to go see. I got tickets to go see Chris Stapleton, which he's good. Like I don't dislike Chris Stapleton. But I found out that Yola and Marcus King were the opening acts, and I was like, I gotta be there for that. Marcus is such a fantastic showman, and Yola I've talked about a ton on here as well. But I stuck around for some Chris Stapleton, and it was really cool. The bummer is it was one of those shows where everybody showed up for him, and so it was at Madison Square Garden, and so when that isn't full, you can kind of feel it. And so I was sitting there for both openers with like maybe a quarter of the place full, and then by the time Marcus finished up, things had kind of filled in.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, look, I've skipped opening acts before too, but I always try to make it in there because you never know when you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I never miss an opening act because I always want to be as front and center as possible for the act I am there to see. So I'll suffer through whatever opening act I have never heard of before. And sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised, but sometimes I'm like, looking at my watch and like, all right, how long does this opening act really have? Yeah, absolutely.
But you're not going to wear a diaper, right? Like there's some people who like wear diapers to like park out in front. Like we're not talking about that, right?
Oh God, no, never done that.
Okay, good. Okay,
no,
all right, cool.
I'll have a friend save my spot if I need to run to the
stories,
restroom.
I've definitely nice. Yeah, I've definitely been. I don't know. I don't think it was Bonnaroo, but it was an outdoor festival where some guy was just peeing next to me or like fairly close to me, and I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. I wish I knew what artist it was, like why I stuck around. I should be the reason why I leave. But like I definitely was standing there with a friend of mine, and we were like, that dude's just peeing.
This is happening.
Like, that's just like he's just I
mean, if you were in Austin at the time, that could just be any random night. It doesn't just any random night downtown could be some dude peeing next to you. So nothing special.
On 6th Street, yeah.
What else?
Did you hear the new Jack White song?
I did not. I've been so completely overwhelmed with new music and surprised by other people telling me about new music that this is now also another surprise to add on to the pile.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, if you like Jack White, it's Jack White. It's pretty intense. It launched with, I think, the announce of a Call of Duty game. So it's like there's a weird, like the music video is like a trailer for the game or something. It's heavy.
Interesting.
The production's cool. There's some cool synth stuff going on there. But yeah, I think you'll dig it. I'm interested to see if this is just some sort of one-off or if it's like a lead track from something else and they just tied it in with this game or something.
Yeah, I'm kind of hot and cold on Jack White himself. But I will absolutely listen to any of his new material for sure. Some of it I like, some of it is like, I'll listen to it once and, not necessarily go back to it. But yeah, that sounds interesting that it would be kind of tied to a game release. So he might just be trying to branch out like he did with, doing a Bond song with Alicia Keys, like we talked about last episode.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. And then again, so my wife is super hip to TikTok. I miss out on a lot of it.
Not my thing.
But she cued me into a mountain. Yeah, she cued me into a Mountain Goat song that's been trending. So I'm assuming you're not familiar or haven't heard about this. So they had this album that I bought a while ago, and I honestly haven't gotten to because their discography is just so thick. Called Tallahassee. I think it came out almost 20 years ago.
Oh wow!
But somebody, it's like just like you can't figure out where some of these things kind of come from. There's one of the songs off of there. It's dark. It's about divorce. Started to trend. I think somebody posted bombing on it and saying this sounded like a middle-aged man crying about a high school love. And like that started trending. And because that started trending, people started, like, they heard the song, they fell in love with the song. There's now a dance that goes along with, like, the set of lyrics, like the chorus of the song, where people, like, move their hands in a certain way. And it's like this
they do on TikTok
trend on TikTok. Yeah. And so everybody's, like, created this dance for this 20-year-old indie song. Wow. And so now you've got, like, all these rock stars who are hip to mountain goats and, like, excited about them having this moment, all posting their own versions of the dance memes. So it's like of inceptioning itself a little bit. So I did tap into TikTok a little bit to see, like, Jack Antonoff doing the mountain goats dance that was created by a bunch of millennials. You know, it's very strange. It's a great song. It's called No Children. You should definitely check it out. Anytime you can listen to mountain goats is a good time.
Yeah. And that's got to be so weird as an artist, like, to have something that you released 20 years ago all of a sudden go viral because of whatever. You know, somebody does something and someone copycats it, and then boom, you know, however many millions of views, and, you know, it probably sold a lot of or had a lot of downloads or streams, and sold a lot of albums off the back of that.
It went to 27 million streams. It exploded. It's crazy. Like, it's the most streamed Mountain Goat song of all time now, which probably wasn't hard to beat. You know, like, it probably wasn't a big mountain to climb, but
but damn,
it's 27 million streams is bananas. Yeah,
that's crazy.
And so, in line with that, so I don't know if you've heard of this band called Maneskin, Maneskin.
I have not.
So they're this, like, Italian glam rock band who also exploded on TikTok. They just played Jimmy Fallon. That was their first, like, TV appearance in the States ever. But so what they did is they recorded this cover of a Frankie Valli song, like a little known Frankie Valli song. They recorded it back in 2017. And, like, the band has just gotten some momentum in Europe, but never really went anywhere. And the song started to explode over the summer on TikTok. And it's catapulted the band to, like, ridiculous heights. So now they're running around in the States now. It's been, like, the top of the global charts for, like, 4 weeks or 5 weeks or something in a row. On the heels of this cover. And so they cut their own song, like, they have their own songs that they've done since, with Iggy Pop. Like, it's gotten so big that, like, they re-recorded their single to relaunch, and Iggy Pop did the guest vocals on it, you know, like, as in line. And you can see, like, they're obviously influenced by him. They're half naked in all their pictures and their performances. I will say that it's like, whenever a band comes out of the gate with a cover, you know, you think of Alien Ant Farm, and you're like, well, wow, what happens next?
Or Tiffany.
Right. You know, where is this going? Yeah.
Sometimes it works, though.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool that, you know, just like Mountain Goats, like, you're hearing guitar-driven music that is trending and exploding on TikTok. Like, it means the audience is there for it. And I think because people have gotten so genre agnostic or genre fluid, it's not like the argument that we have to have every year or so where it's like, is rock dead? I think it just gets reinvented all the time. And these are two examples of just, like, weird things that are happening that are touching, like, a cultural zeitgeist. And it's who knows where it goes from there and if it means anything, but maybe it inspires other people to sing an awkward indie song or take their clothes off and gyrate on stage. Like, all cool by me. Pick up a guitar and go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, all that stuff is cyclical anyway. It comes and goes in and out of style. And there's always a certain element of it in the background where the super fans are going to hold to it. But I do feel like guitar-based music is on its way back. The wave of it coming back into style has started. So that's good. I'm also happy when any Italian artist gets, I'm Italian, so anytime that an Italian artist starts getting some attention, I'm happy for them. You know what I mean? So,
well, and we're talking Spoon later. That's Austin. So we're really just ticking the boxes for Adam
and
tonight.
the new Spoon album, like we'll talk about later, seems to be they're touting it as their most rock and roll album yet.
Nice.
It's very it's going to be heavier, which you can hear in the new single. So I'm happy about that as a guitar player and a rock and roll fan. But man,
you pre-ordered it, right? You pre-ordered
absolutely,
the new Spoon. Yeah.
and that's the only thing that I have to talk about as far as purchases go. Probably mainly because I had an impulse purchase and bought a new Switch OLED model, so that kind of very quickly depleted the fun money fund. So, but I couldn't not pre-order it, and I actually postponed buying some albums that I've been meaning to get to, including the new Explosions in the Sky and the new My Morning Jacket, simply because I had this larger purchase of the new Switch, and but I had to. So, and shout out to Texas Trey on the Discord because he sent the link for the
Spotify
the Spotify exclusive, but it was like I don't even have a Spotify account. It was just like a specific link. Like if you went to the Matador website, it wasn't there for you to like browse to it. But if you had the link, then you could pre-order. It's only a couple bucks more. And I was a little bit hesitant because those kind of tricolor, it's like three different colors. It's not a splatter and it's not like a swirl. It's kind of like the big swatches of color, three different colors. Yeah. And it looks great, but there can be some problems with that type of vinyl where you kind of get a little bit of
separation or something.
Yeah, that can happen.
Wow.
Where you've got like a little bit of noticeable difference in the sound from one color to the next. Yeah. So I'm taking my chances on it a little bit, and hopefully there won't be any issues. I would be perfectly happy with just the black vinyl. Yeah. But I had to just jump on the special edition one. You know what I mean? Worst case scenario, I can either return it or sell it, even if the audio isn't perfect. So I did do that. But as far as listening, I've probably listened to the new Spoon song at least 50 times. It's so good.
Oh, it's so good.
Have you listened to it?
Oh, yeah. It's
oh, my God.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a rocker. I love, the direction that they're going with the, hyper distorted guitar. And it's just so catchy and rhythmic. And I just love it. So I've been listening to that a lot. Do you know what really surprised me that I've been listening to a ton is the new Duran Duran.
Is it good? I haven't spent any time with it.
It's good, and not even in like a tongue-in-cheek kind of way where like I'm listening to Duran Duran, you know what I mean? I am a fan of theirs.
Sure.
But like and one of the reviews of it that I read was saying if this album had been released in 1985, it would have ruled the world.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, no, it sounds really good. It's not so modern that and I was even commenting to somebody about this. If this song had come out, if I didn't know any better that they had a new album and someone had just shown me this song, I would just assume, oh, this is a Duran Duran song from 1987 that I just never have heard before. I really enjoy it. I've probably listened to the whole thing 4 or 5 times. It's really, really good. There's a couple of, There's a couple of songs,
Yeah.
of course, and then there's kind of a miss on a song called Hammerhead that the song itself is really, really cool, but then they have a guest artist come and rap on it, and
boy.
which I'm
Sure.
I'm totally cool with that, and I love hip hop. I have no problem with that. I love having guest artists come in and spit some bars. It just doesn't work with Duran Duran. It is my opinion, obviously,
Sure.
but
Does it
I
feel
think
like a
that
gimmick?
no, it doesn't feel gimmicky. It's just like it feels wrong.
Yeah.
It felt wrong. I mean, imagine, 80s, new wave pop music, in the vein of Duran Duran, but imagine someone rapping over it.
Wow.
It just doesn't work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But other than that, and a couple of songs that are a little bit forgettable, I think it's a phenomenal album.
All right.
And then we have a new My Morning Jacket album,
It's
and
great.
it's really good. I'm a fan of theirs. It is a little bit more of the same for them, but they're a great band and I love what they do. So I'm not disappointed in any way with the fact that it's kind of more of the same for them. It's just kind of an extension of what they were doing on Waterfall and Waterfall 2.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. There's a couple songs that are kind of like, okay, like looking at your watch, waiting for the song to end.
Yeah.
That they meander
that's the pee
a
break
little
when
bit.
it's live. That's your pee break.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, it's a solid album.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to that quite a bit. And then a few others that I was excited about and I'm still excited about, but didn't get as much listening from me. There's a new Nada Surf, and I'm a big fan of a lot of their earlier work. They put out kind of maybe an EP, maybe a kind of a mini album. It's about 7 or 8 songs, but 2 of those songs are a Spanish version and then a French language version of like the first song on the album, like the kind of the leading single, if you want to call it that.
Right.
Which is cool. They've done, French language songs before. There's La Poursa on the my favorite album of theirs, Let Go. But they did one. It's the same song, but it's still Matthew Cause doing the vocals, but he's singing it in Spanish and then singing it in French, which is pretty cool. But it kind of like it doesn't feel like a full album. But the songs that are there are really, really good. I've been enjoying it.
They're another band. I feel like we'll probably get into it a little bit with Spoon later. They're another band, that indie alt scene in the 90s where it felt like almost anything could break in that space. Like they didn't know post grunge, like heading into that, what wound up being that garagey Strokes movement, like what rock was going to do in between the two, and they were signed to Elektra, which Spoon winds up for a hot second being signed to.
Yeah, for a real quick hot second.
And there's a bunch of bands that were wound up on having that same moment with Elektra, where I didn't think that record label was grabbing stuff, but Nada Surf, and I'm not as familiar with the catalog, but I feel like Nada Surf never had their moment. Like maybe like Spoon has had songs that are in movies, and you can hum along to some of them, or maybe someone who doesn't know it's Spoon but knows a song. But is there a song like that for Nada Surf that I don't know?
So
like, was
Popular,
there a moment? Yeah,
Popular was kind of their big hit, and it had it. It's weird because that's one of their songs that doesn't really sound like most of their other stuff.
Sure.
And he's kind of got this non-singing rant that he does during the verses, which is not really what he does on any other song. And of course it had it had a high school element to it, and the music video played into that. And so, before things went quote unquote viral, it was a popular music video.
Okay.
But I mean, none of their other music really sounded like that song.
Right.
So that's probably about as close to a moment as they got.
Interesting.
But no pun intended, it was a popular song.
Yeah.
And but after that, you know what I mean? They didn't really have a moment after that. it didn't really catch.
Yeah.
So,
And that was on their first album, right?
I believe so. I'm not super familiar with their whole catalog either.
Yeah.
But I believe so.
It's early, at least.
High
Yeah.
low.
Yeah.
But the new album's good, and it's kind of, again, it's more of the same for them. I wish there were more songs on it. But it's, maybe it was intended to be an EP with just a few extra songs. So and that's fine too.
Yeah.
We have a new War on Drugs album. I'm not a super fan, but I do really like most of their stuff. I feel like the people that are into War on Drugs are really, really into War on Drugs.
Yeah.
Or you're a little bit like, oh, who's that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do like them. The new album, I haven't given it the amount of digestion that it deserves. So
it just came out. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to put more time into it. But I really like what I've heard so far.
They're easy to listen to. Like my experience with that band is it's an album that I could just throw on in the background or throw on in the car, especially if I'm like driving with my dad, and it's just like no one's going to complain about this music. Yeah, no, like
it's really good driving
good
music.
With this. Yeah, everyone's fine with this. No one's going to be like, turn this crap off. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. I need to give it some more time to make a real determination on it, but it's good. There's a new Clinic album. I don't know if you're familiar with Clinic.
A little bit, yeah.
I was a pretty big fan of theirs in the early aughts, and the new album I haven't really been following them on their their prior few albums. And this one kind of caught me by surprise, and it's strange to me.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's fun to listen to, but it's not quite clicking yet.
Okay.
I've given it a couple listens. It's got a little bit, it's called Fantasy Island, and it seems to have a little bit of like maybe a tropical, like a Caribbean influence kind of melded in with their kind of really sort of robotic sound. So it hasn't quite grabbed me yet. I don't know if it ever will, but I'm still giving it the time that I believe the band deserves. Cause I used to listen to them a lot, particularly like in college. And maybe it'll click with me. Maybe it won't.
Yeah, it's cool to come back around on a band like that too. Like I think we've touched on that a few times here, where it's just you lose touch with a band, you go your own way, your life changes or whatever, and then when you rediscover their music, and then all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 other albums that you missed in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's kind of neat. I feel bad for the artist. Like, yeah, we've been here the whole time. Where did you go? But sorry.
I'm back though. I'll get to you.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, in a similar vein as we're talking about here, new Tori Amos album. Cool. And in high school, I was Tori Amos' biggest fan. So
no way.
Oh yeah, I was a huge Tori Amos fan in high school. I had. Oh my god,
it's all good. Were you like a theater kid at all? Or no?
I was a theater techie.
Okay.
So like that was my like early introduction to like sound engineering.
Okay.
Is like running the sound booth at the local junior theater and school productions and stuff that.
Taking shape. So, got it.
I tried to go the acting. Why do you ask?
I'm just saying, like, admittedly, and I have nothing against Tori Amos. I like a lot of her music, but like all of the quote unquote super fans or people that I've known over the years who are really into Tori Amos tend to be thespian or thespian adjacent. And so like, I didn't know this about you, either of these things about you, your fandom or your history, but I was like, there usually is something there because there's something about the way that she writes and presents her music that is a bit beyond just what a singer-songwriter normally does. And I think
really
that
theatrical in her approach.
It attracts people who want, we talk about sonic landscapes or whatever, but it attracts people who want something that's maybe a little bit more involved or has a vision to it, and usually
Yeah.
that kind of goes along with somebody who's also got a vision for how music fits with performance on stage with a story, etc. So that's cool. Yeah, no, I have not heard anything about this. I didn't even know she had a new album, so that's pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Tori Amos. It's very, ethereal, and it was recorded in England, and I don't know. It sounds great. It's hard to put my finger on it. I've only listened to it here and there. I haven't given it a full front to back listen yet. But I've liked what I've heard so far. It's really mature for her, which is kind of weird to say because, I feel like even her earlier albums when she was much younger were very mature, but it's like she's kind of matured on her own path, and she's created this thing that is, Tori Amos, the artist.
Yeah.
And she's nailed it. She's got an absolute grip on, who she is and what she wants to do as an artist, which is really refreshing. Tori Amos is not an artist that's all over the place.
Yeah.
You know exactly what you're getting.
Right.
And you know what you're getting into, and it's excellence. She absolutely is a stellar musician and songwriter. So you know what you're getting into. So there's at least that, but I'm still kind of trying to give it time to digest and see, okay, am I going to come back to being a huge Tori Amos fan, or is that something that's in my past and I can just kind of enjoy it for what it is now?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if you go back and start listening to a bunch of her older stuff, because there's a density to a lot of the music that I've heard from her there's a little bit of a barrier to entry. Like, I think you have to kind of commit yourself to being absorbed in it a little, and I think when
it's
you're
not
coming
casual
back,
listening by any means.
And I think when you come back to something like that, you might need that past experience of like, all right, maybe I need to go re-listen to what I already figured out, what already plucks at my heartstrings, and then I can go back to this and kind of re-immerse. Like, you might need to find your lens again almost, but that's a lot of work. That's a lot of time and work too. So who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I have tried to go back to her older catalog a few times in recent years, and it definitely doesn't do for me, whatever it did for me as an emotional teenager.
Right.
But it's still objectively great music. It's just not something that I ever really see myself listening to in the context of my life today.
Right.
Anyway. So we had a really interesting and eye-opening community question that, kind of sent me down the rabbit hole because obviously it's something that I'm interested in as someone with a sound engineering background and being trained as a sound engineer. Neoprime on the Discord asked if anybody else was into this Amazon music 360 reality sound. And of course, this is kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
You've got Dolby Atmos. Sony has their thing. And actually the 360 reality thing I think may have come from Sony.
Really?
But this is kind of a new it's just kind of a new world in terms of audio fidelity, where you've got, and I'm going to be careful how I word this because a lot of it is kind of marketing. I'm trying to wade
smoke
through
and mirrors kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so it is a real technology and there's some real applications, but what I was talking about in the Discord is we have to be careful about how we're defining these because there's two different things happening here. You've got this technology that is still a left ear, right ear, two source audio file. And so the wording is, and of course, different companies have their different names for their products, and they're gonna change the wording of things to fit what they feel like is going to be marketable. But so the first with that spatial audio is, I think, what they call it. And what it does is it mimics kind of the way that our ears perceive the location of things. So you know, when you've got a sound that happens behind you, the reason why you know it's behind you is because your brain has processed the delay of that sound wave coming, you know, over your ears and then into your ear canals that way. And so the spatial audio technology kind of tries to mimic that digitally by using, you know, delays and phasing and stuff like that. And it can have some pretty convincing effects. Is the application of that meaningful in music?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. And the other thing about this is that it's very much a your mileage may vary thing, because everyone's ears are shaped differently. Everyone's brains process these things differently. Right. Some of these companies will even have a part of this where they take an image of your literal ear and change the way that they send the signal to you based on your ear shape.
Oh my God.
Now, how much of that is marketing baloney?
Yeah.
I don't know. But
that's crazy.
But yeah, it is essentially mimicking so in somewhat of a convincing way, it can be perceived as, you know, an audio source being kind of behind you or in front of you in a 360 degree field, even with just the two, you know, left channel, right channel. So there's that aspect of it. Obviously now we've got other technologies like, you know, the Dolby Atmos and, you know, like we've had for a while, but never really got super popular, which is like the 5.1 mix, which it never really caught on for music. I think its application in like movies and video game audio, it's much more appropriate for that. And one article that I was reading about it put it this way, where, you know, a studio album is a work of art and isn't necessarily supposed to sound like a performance that you experience in a physical space. You
it's
know
something crafted. It's not like you're trying, like when you're watching a movie or playing a game, you're seeing a visual of what is supposed to be then represented orally to you, as opposed to on an album where it's been just crafted to be a sonic experience and isn't supposed to represent seeing the band on a stage or in an aquarium or whatever it is that the effect is that they're trying to give you. Yeah.
But it's cool technology, and I think its application is for things outside of music more so. Obviously, you know, they always want to market it as, you know, the biggest leap in audio technology since the jump to stereo from mono. Yeah. And of course, you know, I'm usually err more on the side of the grumpy old man that shakes his fist at new technologies kind of thing. But, you know, as someone that went to college for recording arts and sound engineering, the quote unquote magic is kind of lost on me. Because when I listened to some of this stuff, at least with, you know, the 2-channel left ear, right ear spatial audio thing, I could tell what they were doing, and it did have some really neat imaging effects to it. But I could hear what they were kind of doing in the mix. You know what I mean? You can hear the panning and the phasing that they were, you know, the kind of the tricks that they used to get it to sound like an instrument or a voice is in a particular place.
So trippy.
It was interesting, but again, does it really enhance my listening experience when my goal is to be, you know, emotionally moved by what I'm listening to? Probably not. You know what I mean?
Is it better to listen to Pink Floyd with that or on an edible or both? But like, I'd probably start with the edible and then maybe go to the 360. I don't know.
I think the edible probably pairs better with the laser show.
Yeah. Good call.
So, but who knows? Maybe, maybe they can marry those two worlds and have a 360 audio experience combined with the laser show and really blow everyone's minds.
I wonder though, is there an application here when I think last week I talked about watching that Tina Turner concert, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some sort of application where you have Axis or Live by Live or whatever company is broadcasting concerts to your house or whatnot, to have what we were just talking about, have the visual of like being at the Oasis 96 Nebworth concert and feeling like, because they did that in theaters for that run, right? But like, can you do that at home? Is it worth Olivia Rodrigo or The Weeknd or someone like that doing a concert, putting it on Disney Plus or whatever, and having it that compatible, just like some things are compatible with 4K, having it compatible with this technology? Because I could see, I agree, when you're talking about a particular album, the experience doesn't necessarily need to be that 360 immersive unless it's composed, produced, and written to be that way. Mm-hmm. But if you're talking about a live show and you want to feel that the guitarist is playing over here and that the mix is hitting you in a certain way and there's a little slap even or something, and maybe you're feeling the crowd around you, like hearing the crowd
noise behind you.
Like there could be something there, I think.
Yes. And a couple of these articles touched on that, where it could work really well for that kind of live concert experience, whether it's there's a video aspect to it and you've got a 5.1 or a Dolby Atmos, where you've got multiple speakers in the room with you. Yeah. Or whether you're using that spatial audio technology, because I mean, let's face it, going to see a live show and listening to an album are two completely different experiences. Mm-hmm. So I can definitely see that enhancing I'm doing what I can to experience a live show in my home. Right. So, I agree with you there 100%.
Yeah, could be cool. Tim said that he was listening to this in his headphones. So that the Amazon thing or whatever you can use just in headphones, and it's the file that's doing it, as opposed to like having speakers set up in your house that can output this. Is that what you're saying? Like,
yeah, it's two different things. Okay. The spatial audio is it literally is just a way that they have mixed recorded or mixed this 2-channel. It's still a 2-channel audio file, right? But they use a lot of tricks to mimic that that thing that your brain does to tell where something is in reality around you.
But you didn't need to have like your uncle install speakers like in your ceiling behind your couch to experience that, right? Like you could just do that in a pair of headphones. Got it. Okay.
And then they also have, something entirely different, which is called dynamic binaural audio. Okay. And that's where you're literally using, head tracking technology, whether it's, accelerometers in a VR headset or what have you, to where it's tracking your head movements, because like with a VR headset, it tracks your head movements. So when you turn your head, the video input moves to match your head movement.
And the audio moves too?
Yes. So for example, if you've got something in a virtual reality space in front of you, you hear it in front of you, but if you turn to the left, now you hear it in your left ear. So that is a completely different technology. And again, probably not applicable to album listening, but might be really cool for a live concert experience. If you had a live virtual reality concert where, you were dead center at your favorite band's big concert, and you can look around you and look at different parts of the stage, and the way that it sounds changes with you moving your head. That could be really cool.
Yeah. And I'd still wear the diaper if I wanted to, just to get the feeling, right? And like have a beer spilled on me by someone just to have that. Yeah. Okay.
I'll come to your house and pee on the floor next to you, so you get that. You get that part of the experience.
Yeah, no, it needs to be immersive. I need the full. If I'm going that deep, I gotta go.
That costs a lot extra, though.
Yeah. Charge me $12 for a beer. Yeah.
Yeah, that part of it too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing that up, Tim. That was great.
For sure.
Yeah. And something that
that's
I've never heard about. Yeah, I've never heard of any of this before. So it's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, do you want to talk about a couple quick news topics?
So I had a question for you. You watched the Hulu Beatles or McCartney Rick Rubin thing, right?
McCartney 3-2-1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I haven't watched that. And admittedly, like, I'm always behind on Beatles stuff. I'm not the biggest Beatles head. Appreciate them, but it's just like I don't super lean in on that stuff. I know what I know, and that's about it. This Peter Jackson thing, though, does seem interesting. It's out on Thanksgiving weekend. The documentary that they've been teasing now. It does,
for a long time.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I think I'm going to watch this. I'm assuming you're going to watch it, right?
I'm absolutely going to watch it.
I just, like, it boggles my mind when there's so much footage. I remember watching the Oasis Supersonic doc, and it was just, there was so much footage that they have. You can't recreate that. Of, like, them just rehearsing and figuring it out and, like, screwing up on stage and everything. And I'm like, who has who's prescient enough to be like, yeah, I gotta tape this. Now it's the Beatles, and like I would hope, but also it's the 60s. Like, do you just have a bunch of cameras following you around? Like, how did they do that?
Like, how much film did they use?
Yeah.
That's
so I'm excited to check it out, but I feel like admittedly part of it will be like, this is cool behind the scenes. I want to see the Beatles. Peter Jackson's a very good storyteller. I love a good story. But I feel like I'm going to spend most of my time just constantly thinking, like, who is shooting? How did they do this?
Why are they filming this?
Why does this exist? How did you guys do this? Yeah.
I'm hoping there's a good story that it keeps you interested. As big of a Beatles fan as I am, I don't necessarily need to see hours and hours of studio outtakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
I am a Peter Jackson fan. I am a big Beatles fan. I don't necessarily see how those two things correlate, but we'll see.
I'm not saying that he's Scorsese, but there is that, sometimes you do have these great directors who can also then, if they're immersed in something, draw a story out of some content, so it could happen. I feel like there was that Rolling Stones thing that Scorsese did where I was like, again, Rolling Stones, same thing. I know what I know. I like them, but like I don't immerse myself in everything.
Right.
But that was like, oh, okay, this is really cool. Like he shot
Scorsese
a concert.
can definitely do a documentary. Peter Jackson though is like, he really shines with the fantasy element, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I'm a little bit like, I'm gonna watch it no matter what because I love the Beatles, but I don't care that Peter Jackson is behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. Hopefully I'm just, being a grumpy old man and shaking my fist at things. But yeah, I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm excited about it.
All right. We're going to have to do a recap on that because I think it seems like it's good timing. Thanksgiving weekend. I'll have a little time. I'll probably just pop it on and family will be around, but it's an easy thing everybody will be okay with. Leslie Bricusse, no one's going to know who that is. I don't know the name either. But he passed away at 90 the other day.
90.
I'm only bringing it up primarily fantastic lyricist back in the era when you would have lyricists working with composers for theater and film. He wrote the lyrics to Goldfinger. He also wrote the lyrics to You Only Live Twice, both with John Barry. So again, usually the composer gets the credit on this and the lyricist kind of falls by the liner notes. But with our Bond talk last week, just figured throwing that out there. Also, so he wrote, which is going to be played in my house a ton shortly. He wrote "Somewhere in My Memory" from Home Alone, which I love that song, dude. Like, I love Home Alone.
Oh my God.
I love Home Alone and Home Alone 2, but the hook of that song, like when you say the word "somewhere in my memory," I can almost not say it that way and just say "somewhere in my memory."
You hear it. You hear the choir.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he
God.
did. He also did, and Hook is not as wildly loved as Home Alone. I still love Hook, but some people go back on Hook and are just like, that movie stinks. He wrote "When You're Alone," which is the song that the daughter sings, which was nominated for a bunch of awards and stuff. Hook, by the way, not a film podcast, obviously, but
as well be at this point after the last episode.
Yeah, that's true. Have we ever talked about the cameos in Hook? Do you know anything about all the different like random cameos that are in that movie?
Well, yeah, I know at least a couple of the pirates, right?
Yeah, so David Crosby, right?
Right, yeah.
And Glenn Close plays a male pirate. Yep. And then Phil Collins is the detective who comes to the house when the kids get abducted.
Okay, I didn't know that one.
So crazy. It's just like Steven Spielberg brought all of his friends.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's so wild. Yeah. So great movie. I for some reason I do wind up watching Hook around this time of year almost every year. And my daughter's old enough where I think she can kind of get through it and be into it, but we'll see. There's some stuff in there that happens that's like pretty real, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so some fantastic just film music that just echoes in my house and has for years.
Well, those are like the two most heartbreaking songs from my childhood. So
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Point.
Like that song when she's singing "When You're Alone," like that's just guts you.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's
devastating.
That's absolutely.
Yeah.
What else
and
we
then
got?
The last thing is Astroworld. So Travis Scott's put on this festival, which is crazy Travis Scott's massive. He did that thing at Fortnite. He's just a monster in the hip hop world, and he does things in his own way. Full respect for him. I like his music. I'm not a massive fan, but total respect for how this guy kind of runs his stuff. He has done a festival I don't think he did it last year, but this will be the third one. I think he did 2018 and 2019. Put up tickets for this festival. It's in Houston. It's not too far from me, right? He put up tickets in the spring, sold 100,000 tickets. The festival is in the first week of November, and they announced the lineup a couple days ago, like the end of October, like a week before the actual festival. So these people, 100,000 plus people, bought tickets to a festival in Houston with no idea. Yet. No idea. Wow. Just trusting that the experience was going to be worth it. And I think they delivered. It's funny because I remember having this kind of same conversation a little while back with people about Woodstock, where it's like they weren't putting out the lineup, but they were like, guys, it's Woodstock, come on. And then that whole thing fell apart and was a disaster.
Right.
And didn't happen. But this one, it's like Tame Impala, Master P, Bad Bunny, Earth, Wind and Fire, SZA. It's all over the place. It's so smartly curated. I do think that kids are going to have a great time, and obviously Travis also headlines.
Right.
It seems like, unless you never know about the actual functions on site, because that can always be a mess, especially with COVID. Nothing against Texas, but there's just, I feel like this, when I saw the lineup, I was like, oh, they delivered. It's this crazy genre agnostic lineup that ticks every box, and everyone's gonna, dude, you can go listen to Tame Impala and then dance to Earth, Wind and Fire. Come on. And then Master P's gonna make you say, that's gonna be fantastic. Yeah. So bravo to Travis Scott and whoever he has putting that together. That job well done. Great job, guys. Yeah.
Wow. That's. I mean, because I can see buying passes for ACL or Bonnaroo or whatever, South by Southwest before seeing a lineup, but oh my God, like this
And like
is
a week
this is a new
beforehand,
thing,
too,
right?
also.
Is this the
Yeah.
first time they've done this?
I mean, it's the third year they've done this festival, and they.
Oh, okay.
But I think that I don't think that they usually announce the lineup this close. I think they usually give it a little bit closer. Maybe there was some kind of holdup in announcing it, but usually, at least with Bonnaroo or any of those, you buy your tickets sight unseen, but then like a month later, you find out who you're going to see, and then it gives you
Gotcha.
time to decide like. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna throw these on StubHub. You know, like I'm actually not.
Right.
I'm not feeling fish every night. But what are you gonna do? Yeah.
Oh man, but that does sound like a pretty amazing lineup.
It's a cool lineup, man. Yeah.
So just some.
What do we got? What do we got in
We
history?
got a brief. We're keeping it a little bit slim to we're almost up to an hour already.
Yeah.
But a couple of quick this day in music history notes. November 1st, 1968, George Harrison released his first solo album, that Wonderwall Music album. The songs were mostly instrumentals written by Harrison. Also features Eric Clapton and Ringo Starr, of course, but there's actually, and this was new information for me, an uncredited banjo contribution by Peter Tork of the Monkees.
Oh wow, that's cool.
I had no idea. So that's
The Beatles and the Monkees played like technically a Beatle and a monkey played on a record
Beatle
together. I
and a
don't know if
monkey
they've ever
played
done
together.
that. I don't think that's ever been a thing. Yeah.
That is news to me. So
That's pretty cool.
That I thought that was fun.
Wow.
And then speaking of George Harrison, on November 2nd, 1974, 6 years later, Harrison became the first Beatle to undertake a solo world tour. And that was, that November 2nd was the first night of the tour, a 30-night tour. And I believe that started in Vancouver, Canada.
Huh. Now, is that because, is that a little bit of a technicality? Because I'm assuming
Maybe.
McCartney and Wings, right, had toured before that, right?
I think the technicality is the world tour.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because okay, got it. Yeah, I just like McCartney seemed and has always seemed to me like the workhorse of that band.
Right.
Like he was this like driving force of like always wanting to produce and be out there and be on stage. So it's interesting that it would be George Harrison who it was a busy guy and he put out a lot of work, but he also was not the guy who was just like trying to get out there constantly. He was a little more reclusive. So that's interesting that he would be out of the gate so quickly. Huh.
So just a quick Google search. It looks like 76 was the first world tour for McCartney and Wings.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it looks like Harrison had him beat by 2 years.
So everything else with Wings must have just been like UK or something. Like they didn't go to America. Yeah, interesting.
Unless both of these two sources are wrong. I mean, which is it's possible.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
So it's a world tour qualifier. I wasn't sure if it was like technically he went out as George Harrison and not George Harrison and the Harrisons or something. like yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's the best info that I could find. Is it looked like the first world tour by Paul McCartney and Wings was 76.
Got it. All right. So good on you, George.
Yeah. And then November 3rd, 1957, Sun Records released Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis. The single went on to sell over 5 million copies worldwide. It was a number one hit in the UK and number 2 hit in the US. So one of the first rock and roll singles. It's hard to imagine what it must have been like in the mid to late 50s hearing something like Great Balls of Fire coming over the radio airwaves. It's like, oh my God, that must have been insane.
Yeah, that's I also know, I don't know why I know this, but my wife danced to that in her like 7-year-old dance recital, like they
Oh,
go
yeah.
to dance class, and like she showed me the moves one time. I think it came on the radio or whatever. She's like, oh my God, I used to do a dance
she
to this.
remembered
And,
the moves.
She remembered the dance moves.
That's fantastic.
Also just, and I know that this has nothing to do with any of it, but was sitting eating lunch with like I had a little play date, lunch date or whatever with another kid, a little boy that my daughter's been friends with for a long time. And he said something about getting kicked in the balls, and my daughter turned to me and said,
"Oh God,
what are balls?" And I was like,
"Oh God,
in a pizzeria? Come on, like that's not. I don't want to deal with this right now. Come on." I was like, "We'll talk about it later. I'll tell you."
Yeah,
like, eat your pizza.
Yeah, like don't worry about it.
It just sparked in my head. Like, yeah, I was talking about balls just a few hours ago.
Oh, those moments, of course.
Yeah.
And then just a few quick birthdays. November 1st, 1951, American composer, singer, songwriter Ronald Bell with Kool and the Gang had the 1981 number one hit Celebration, of course, most people know, but also had over 15 other top 40 hits in their career. Unfortunately died just recently, actually, late last year at the age of 68. Yeah. Ronald Bell. November 1st, 1957. Happy birthday to Lyle Lovett. Country singer, needs no introduction. A little tidbit that I learned today as well. Dire Straits took Lyle Lovett on their first American tour that they did.
Oh, cool.
So that's an interesting lineup. That would have been cool to see. Pretty fun lineup.
Yeah.
And then November 1st, 1962, happy birthday to Anthony Kiedis, singer and co-founder of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
And so they're out on tour with a bunch of cool artists right now.
Really?
Too, or they're going out on tour.
I don't
with
really
a bunch
follow
of artists.
them.
It's like, admittedly, like the conversation that I had with my friend was like, the Strokes are opening up for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Do we go see the Strokes? But I think
I would probably stick around to see them
for a few. Yeah. I would do a Stapleton move. I would go and I'd be like, I'll see 5 songs. Let me see what this is all about, and then I'll beat the traffic, and you guys can drink your beer.
Exactly.
But it's like, it's not just like the Strokes are touring with the Chili Peppers. I think it's like Beck is opening on some dates, St. Vincent, Haim, Thundercat. Like, it's like a bunch of different, I think they like spottedly like set up these little mini routings.
That's cool.
Check your listings, because it might actually be kind of a neat lineup to see an opening act that is amazing, and then the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which who knows? Maybe you're really into them. Nothing against the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Well, they put on I'm not a huge fan. I don't dislike them. They apparently put on a really good live show.
As long as they have their clothes on. I'm
as
not
long as they have their clothes
for
on.
dong. Yeah, I don't need the dong. Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty old now, so they probably don't.
I wouldn't put it past them, dude. Those guys are crazy.
I wouldn't put it past Flea.
That's true. Yeah.
It's funny. I love Flea as a musician, and I was happy when John Frusciante came back, because I'm a fan of his as well. But I actually don't even know much about who the new guitar player is this week.
Well, Frusciante's in. I think he's still in.
Is he back now?
He's back. He's
for a third time.
Yeah, he's back.
Wow.
He's back in action again with the band. Well, unless something changed in the past week, I don't know. I feel like I heard something. Yeah, I heard something like 3 or 4 months ago. Like, he's with them. They're doing stuff. They're potentially new music or something. Like, there's been like buzz that they're doing stuff together again, and they're all friends. So if he's playing with the band, that's one of those things where I'm like,
I would stay for more than 5 songs.
Maybe I need to see maybe I need to see Frusciante play with the Chili Peppers, because who knows if this is going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. That's fun. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then November 1st, 1963, happy birthday to Rick Allen, the drummer for Def Leppard, famously, lost his left arm in a car crash in 1984. But still, continued to drum in in Def Leppard. So
like
good on him.
Reworked his drum kit and relearned how to play drums without an arm. Like how?
That's rock and roll, man. That's
so rock and roll.
You lost an arm? I'm still the drummer of this band, man.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Jesus.
Awesome. And then speaking of John Barry, happy birthday to John Barry, November 3rd, born in 1933. Obviously, he's no longer with us. He passed away in 2011, but composed scores for 11 of the James Bond films between 1963 and 1987. Also wrote the Grammy and Academy Award winning scores to Dances with Wolves and Out of Africa. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Wow.
I learn a lot doing this podcast.
Yeah.
So got to do
I'll
the
do
research.
good at trivia night whenever that happens again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then last but not least, November 4th, 1969, Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, P. Diddy. His many different monikers, American record producer, clothing designer, and rapper. And I don't know if this was an old information, but I've read that he is the wealthiest rap artist of all time, sitting at something like $360 million. I'm not sure where Jay-Z is at, but
I was going to say he's the probably only other one that's really a contender. Is
he's
Jay-Z.
worth a third of a bill. So I don't know who else is there, but
that's Ciroc, man.
That may have been old information, but who knows? Plus, he's got his hands in a lot of stuff, though, because he's got his fashion line and all that stuff. So who knows?
He did that TV show, that Making the Band. That was huge for a while, and I'm sure that he just made a ton of money off of Danity Kane and all those groups that went out. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we probably should just refer to this guy as Puff or Puffy, because I think in the retro logic and all that, so there's just one Diddy and it's not this guy. So let's just we'll just agree in the future we'll just call him Puff or Puffy or something like that. We don't want to confuse people when we're talking about Diddy. We don't. Diddy Kong is the Diddy. Yeah.
Diddy Kong is the original Diddy.
That's right.
I remember, so I have this very vivid memory. It must have been the late 90s or whenever it was that Notorious B.I.G. passed away. And that's when he announced he was changing his name from Puff Daddy to Diddy, because apparently that's what Notorious B.I.G. had called him. Oh,
interesting. Okay, I didn't know
he changed that. That's what I'm remembering.
Okay.
This is 20-year-old memories, so may not be fully accurate. That's what I remember anyway.
Yeah, you just thought he was a Super Nintendo fan. You were like,
well, and then I was like, hey, you can't take that name. I'm playing a kart racing game based on Diddy.
Yeah, it has airplanes. Get out of here.
Yeah, it's not just go-karts. It's airplanes and these little hovercraft things. Yeah.
Who's your friend? Whizpig? What?
The annoying that, and I can't get past the frickin' octopus because the cheats, the damn cheating octopus.
Rubber band. Yeah.
Anyway, we're having way too much fun. But let's talk about some Spoon.
Yeah, let's flip it over.
We got to flip it over because we're running out of time, and these things, I don't know how many minutes aside we've got on these podcast thingies. Yeah. As I'm shaking my fist at all of these computer screens. We'll play
it at we'll play it at 10 RPMs and it'll
just slow it down.
Yeah. That's
if you play it backwards, there's some satanic messages that may have been hidden here and there, but
I could put those in the front end too if we want.
I don't know. I don't know how you play a podcast backwards, but we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you on side B for some Spoon.
Cool.
Back. We are on side B of our 11th episode of Retro Groove, and we thought that it was a good time to go back and look at the illustrious catalog of one of my favorite bands, Spoon. They're an Austin hometown hero, formed in 1993 by Britt Daniel and Brian Eno. Brian Eno kind of being maybe one of the unsung heroes of the group.
Jim Eno.
What did I say?
Brian Eno. Different
What?
Eno.
You're kidding me. Why did I write Brian Eno on my notes?
We're leaving this in.
Well, yeah, we have to, but oh my God. That's funny. Now we'll leave it in, but
yeah, there's not too many Enos, so
there's not a lot of Enos, and I just conflated the two Enos
that's fine.
Of note in the music.
Yeah.
Okay, so skirt. Let's back it up a little bit. Formed in 1993 by Britt Daniel and Jim Eno. I just put it down on my notes when I was writing my notes earlier, and I put Brian Eno. Well, we have to have a Brian Eno episode at some point.
Yeah, I'm down.
Anyway, Jim Eno, who is the drummer, but also is an electrical engineer and kind of became the de facto sound engineer of the band.
And co-producer, yeah.
Yeah, I feel, and he's got his studio here in Austin, and I feel like he contributes a lot to some of their kind of studio trickery, playfulness, which you hear in a lot of their songs. But they started out, they were in the same band together, I believe. I think this is from memory, but I think it was called Alien Beats. And that's how they met. And they formed Spoon in 1993, released an EP, Nefarious, in 1994. And by the next year, they were signed to Matador. So, it didn't take them a long time as Spoon to get signed to, I think even at the time, they were a pretty well-respected, I know I knew about Matador in the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know
it's
how
big
early.
label. Yeah.
But, they were signed by the next year and put out their debut album. And we were joking earlier before we started recording about how to pronounce of course, being in Texas, I want to say telefono.
Yes.
What would be the pronunciation of the Spanish word, but the Spanish word is spelled with an F and not the PH. So maybe it's telefono. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. It's a great album. It was released in 1996 on Matador. Received mixed reviews from critics. They compared them to, trying to sound like the Pixies, Pavement, Wire, bands like that, which is a pretty apt comparison going back and listening to it. But, it got mixed reviews, and going back and listening to it now, you're like, oh, wow. I mean, I can tell that that's Britt Daniel, but this doesn't really sound like Spoon.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know this album at all, but
I bought it actually last year when it was reissued on vinyl, I think for the first time.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I have to pick that up. And I've listened to it a couple times, but it's really not something that I go back to. So just kind of by default, if we're gonna, rank the Spoon albums, you know
It'll
what I mean?
as
far as and not that it's a bad album. It's honestly not. It's just, it doesn't sound like Spoon.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I think the precursor to any time when you're ranking something in most situations, if you're taking the time to rank the albums of a band that you like or an artist that you like, you're probably also just not good. There's probably not going to be a lot that you dislike or that you think is bad from that. So when you look through this catalog of 9 albums, there's not a bad album at all, which is also very impressive.
Very impressive.
So yeah, it's nothing against Telefono.
Telefono. I'll have to try to find some old interviews or something and see if we can get some snippet of one of the band members talking about it.
Yeah.
To figure out what the...
Were you into them before you wound up in Texas? Or was it like heading to Texas and you got your Spoon album handed to you?
I don't know that I would say I was a fan. I remember hearing Girls Can Tell for the first time when I was working at Newbury Comics. So in 2001, that's when Girls Can Tell came out, and that's when I was working there. That's when I was introduced to them, and I liked it. and we listened to it quite a bit in the store, but I wouldn't necessarily say I didn't buy the album at that point, and I wouldn't necessarily say I was a fan yet. I didn't really become a fan until Kill the Moonlight, and that would have been 2002, and I was in Texas at that point.
Okay. Cool.
So me knowing about Spoon and hearing them, obviously I listened to Kill the Moonlight because I knew Girls Can Tell, and it just seemed like, oh, let's check this one out. Let's see if this one is as good as the last one. But it wasn't because and in fact, I wasn't even in Austin in 2002. I was living in El Paso at the time. So it wasn't an organic, moving to Austin. What's this Spoon thing I keep hearing about? It was just, being a fan of, rock and roll and indie rock music. It just happened naturally that way.
Now, right before that, so the album that was before Girls Can Tell is a series of sneaks, which you talked about.
Yes.
Picking up, that was the last one that you needed to pick up in your collection to complete the discography, the current discography at least. Right?
Yeah. And it for one reason or another, and probably because I wasn't as familiar with it, it ended up being the last record that I picked up, and I only picked up, Telefono last year because of the reissue, and I didn't want to miss out on that because I knew I was going to be trying to complete the discography. It's actually grown on me quite a bit. Like I'm going to have a really hard time putting Series of Sneaks as number 8 right ahead of Telefono, because it's really grown on me in this last couple of months as I've had it, and I've listened to it on vinyl, and I found myself listening to it in the car. And there's just some really, really stellar songs on the album. And, it's a clear distinction. And that distinction, if you go back and listen to the Soft Effects EP, which came out, I think, just a year after the debut in 96, you can hear a clear distinction on that EP, where they kind of stick to a rhythmic style and they're a real minimalist approach to what they're doing, which has kind of been their signature since then. So there's definitely a noticeable difference with Series of Sneaks. And even though we're talking about 1998, and we were talking about Elektra, that was their one and only Elektra release. So they signed to Elektra in early 1998. They released Series of Sneaks. And then, like 4 months later, they got dropped by the label.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of that going on. I touched on it on side A, but there was a lot of that going on. Well, that confusion in that time again of like, what is after grunge? What is alt rock? What form does it take? And everybody was scrambling. The Pixies had their success, and you had Elektra signing a lot of these bands like the Afghan Wigs and the Breeders, but like. They weren't, it was like a gold rush, but they weren't actually promoting. A lot of these artists have come out and said after the fact that they just felt like they just got shoved on the store shelves with no marketing support, no promotion, that it was like certain projects were prioritized over these other bands and they weren't given a chance. And this isn't a new story. This is something that you hear time and time again by bands. But the weird thing with this one is, so you had this guy, Ron Lafitte, who is still a big shot in the industry. He manages One Republic and Pharrell Williams. He used to manage Chris Cornell until he passed, but still like a huge icon in the industry. And back then, he was doing A&R, and he chased after Spoon for like a year and a half, trying to get them to sign with him, with Elektra. It's like trying to win them over. And he promised like he was going to stick it out. He would do everything he could do to make this band. Because again, like we'll get into this, but Britt has a presence, right?
Yeah.
Like he is a rock star, unassuming in some ways, but there's this swagger to him that like this guy, he's one of those guys you see him and you're like, he was destined to do this.
Absolutely.
And so Ron Lafitte was kind of like bringing him, saying like, we're going to be the one that creates you. I'm writing with you. And then he went and got himself fired. I don't know the details of why.
I don't know either.
and the head of the label at the time had also promised, as that was going down, just because it's this lady Sylvia Rohn, who's also still big in the industry now, had promised that like they were going to stay on Elektra and be a priority even with Ron gone. And then the band gets dropped like a few months later. But before that, they are able to put out like a single with a B-side that you can go out and find, and it's all about disappointment and being what's the word I'm looking for? Just like
disenfranchised,
misled. Like just like no actual honesty or anything. It's called The Agony of Lafitte, and then the B-side was Lafitte, Don't Fear Me Now. So little inside baseball, but the songs are out there. They're fun, and it gives a little texture to like hearing these songs and being like, what is going on here? Yeah. And he shouts out Sylvia Rohn in the song too. I mean, it's very it's what you would hear now in like a rap diss track like or something, but it was happening in like late 90s hipster indie rock,
That's amazing.
Yeah. So not on Elektra anymore. Like you said, they started on Matador, and actually jumping ahead, they're back on Matador.
They're back on Matador.
The last album and the new album are all on Matador. Matador's a great label.
And I've had discussions in like some of the vinyl groups that I run with, where there's like, okay, is the Matador pressing or is the Merge pressing better of this particular album? So it's like, because there's concurrent pressings now, and some of them are like special editions and this, that, and the other thing, but all the Spoon albums sound great. Yep.
Yeah, so they go to Merge in 2000, and that's the album that we were just talking about before, Girls Can Tell, right?
And Girls Can Tell may have my favorite Spoon song on it, which is Everything Hits at Once. Okay. And I don't know if it's because realistically thinking about it, me first hearing Spoon in that records in Newbury Comics, that would have been it's the first song, the first track on the album. Mm-hmm. So it would have been the first Spoon song I ever heard. So I don't know if it's that, or if it's just, the song really connects with me, but I have one song downloaded onto my phone as an actual file, and it's that song.
Amazing.
Because we had a vehicle at one point where you could only get the phone to connect to the car's USB system and the car to recognize it as an iPod if you had at least one MP3 downloaded onto it. Okay. Even though streaming was a thing at that point, the vehicle was old enough that it would only recognize being plugged in if you had a song downloaded.
And so this was the song. You're like, well, I'm definitely going to want to listen to this.
Yeah, and now that's not even the case, but I still keep it. It's downloaded on my phone because it's like one of my favorite songs of all time.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, so 2001, Girls Can Tell, it ended up being a critical and commercial hit. It outsold both of their first two albums combined in numbers.
Wow.
And then pretty quickly kind of turned right around and did Kill the Moonlight. Mm-hmm. And of course, with Girls Can Tell being a success, you can imagine, kind of the nervousness in releasing Kill the Moonlight. It's like, okay, is this gonna be another hit? Was that a fluke? Like, what's gonna happen here? Yeah. We're on this new label, and this is our second attempt with this label. Is it gonna continue in that direction? And it absolutely did. The Way We Get By was, and I don't know how much of this is, it was a hit record, so they used the songs in a couple TV shows, or if it was like, a business thing where the label pushed for it to be in the show, and that, created the popularity for the album. Who knows how much of that, cross activity is, at play here. But, The Way We Get By was in the OC, in the first episode of Shameless. And we'll talk about Stranger Than Fiction later, but it was used in that movie as well.
And I mean, their music lends itself to this kind of stuff really well. You know,
Yeah.
touched on it just earlier before a little bit, but like the way that they write these pop songs that are not pop songs, but they are, you can hear them. I don't hear them in a Domino's commercial, but I do hear
Right.
them. I do hear them in cool movies and TV shows. Like it's something that if somebody's walking down the hallway of a high school crying, like I could, or not crying, probably not, but like maybe celebrating
Maybe.
or feeling really good about a basketball game or whatever. Like I could hear a Spoon song, you know,
Absolutely.
like the cool guy out in the parking lot. Yeah, I could hear a Spoon song.
I could see a sad teenager crying, you know, in the hallway after being shoved in his locker and listening to it, and you hear everything hits at once. I can 100% see that.
Okay.
So who knows? But yeah, I agree with you 100%. And we'll talk about Stranger Than Fiction. I don't know too much about that process and what happened there with the creation of that. I know that Britt worked closely with,
He
the
scored
director?
it, I think. Yeah, he scored the whole
Oh,
thing.
he flat
and
out scored it.
Well, he scored it with the director, and you wind up getting a bunch of other Spoon songs, like older Spoon songs, because that was like 2006, I think. And so, you know, a 4-year-old Spoon song works its way into that film alongside a bunch of others. A Will Ferrell film, right? But like a weird one, you know, not like it wasn't old school. It was like cerebral, you know.
I remember really liking it, but I only saw it once, and I don't remember I probably wouldn't have been huge into Spoon at the time because I don't even remember the Spoon connection or hearing like, oh, that's a Spoon song here and there. So it'll be interesting. I want to go back and watch it and see how many Spoon tracks I can identify.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who did it had done a lot of those, like Lost in Translation and Marie Antoinette, like a lot of those really buzzy kind of big but indie films. I'm blanking on his name now, but he did the whole score with Brit. And you know, there's a bunch of other artists who are on the soundtrack, but there's tons of Spoon music that's kind of worked in throughout the whole thing. You're right, it would be cool to kind of go back and watch the movie and see if you hear just a bunch of Spoon licks or something like that.
I've been meaning to anyway because somebody at work reminded me of it, and I need to. I've been meaning to go back anyway and give it another
worth checking out
viewing. You know, 15 years later.
Yeah.
But so in that movie, you would have had music from Kill the Moonlight, and then also from the 2005 release Gimme Fiction. And Gimme Fiction is probably where I transformed from a casual fan into this is one of my favorite bands. This is, you know, there's something here. It debuted at number 44. It was their first real like charting album. Number 44 on the Billboard chart. Sold more than 160,000 copies. So it was, you know, you're seeing the progression here. You're seeing the curve start to go upward in their trajectory, and it's not coming back down.
Right.
You know, I still remember hearing on KUTX, which is the kind of public radio station here in Austin. I remember hearing an early like demo version of I Summon You off of that album, and it was like just Brit and an acoustic guitar. So it was like a really early demo of it. And I think you can hear it on like the extended version of that album. But it's just Brit and an acoustic guitar. And it was like, this is an early preview of a new song off their forthcoming album. And I was just entranced by it. And I remember kind of being a little bit disappointed because you listen to it on the album and it's got the full band with drums and a bass guitar and everything. And I was like, what happened to the stripped down one with just the acoustic guitar? But I'm like 99% sure that early just acoustic version is on one of the, you know, expanded versions of that album. Should be on streaming.
You don't think that it was like an exclusive thing that they did for local radio or anything like that?
I
Like
don't
it
think
wasn't
so,
something
because
that
they
did in
didn't
the
market it
studio?
like that. It was
Okay.
it was just like an
Interesting.
early version of the song,
Like
and
a
I
demo.
think it was the demo version of it. But I remember hearing that, and then the album comes out, and I'm just like kind of blown away
Yeah.
with you've got kind of the hit from that album was probably "Turn My Camera On," which a lot
Yep.
of people know. But I was more completely blown away by a lot of the other songs that weren't necessarily hits. It's really an expansive album that has a lot of different textures to it, and that's I feel like that's the first time that we got that from Spoon, where it's. I mean, I wouldn't call any of their albums one dimensional by any means, but this one was like going from a 2D movie to a 3D movie for me. It really
Yeah.
started to, and maybe it was, maybe part of that was just the production, but they started to use other instruments. You've got like a lot more violin and stuff like that going on. So I think they just started to branch out more creatively too.
But it always feels more. It always feels very calculated, right? It doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
It never seems big, or at least big for bigness sake. It always seems like they're trimming things off, but everything that's there needs to be there and is very smartly
Yes.
placed and planned. And I do think that both Britt and Jim, I mean, they've produced or co-produced every single album
Yes.
with some other people, but
Right.
like there's something very smart about the way those two, they have a vision for what the sound of Spoon is.
Definitely.
And they'll play with it a little bit, but they stick to it, and they always seem to retain it, which isn't that surprising when you're an artist and you have a vision for it, but sometimes that can get lost as you're jumping from label to label. And they've had a rotating cast of bandmates and producers
Yes,
and
they have.
collaborators, and like we'll talk through the rest of these albums. Like they have maintained the Spoon way of constructing their sound ever since. And I'll
100%.
say right now, like Gimme Fiction is where I should have patched in. I had a friend who loved this album, and just like other friends who were trying to sell me on music at the time, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to listen to this. And like I should have listened, and like you got to be ready for a song or an artist when you're ready for it. So I'll accept that. But it wasn't until the next one, which is ga 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 ga. I don't even know how you say that. Like, what is there a cadence to that? I've never said it out loud. But like the next
I
album
always
was
seem
my
to put the
album.
emphasis on the third ga. Like ga 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 ga. I don't know.
Not just ga 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 ga.
When you put the emphasis on every syllable
Every
of the
single one.
word.
Yeah.
And it's that is like studio ease kind of, when you're discussing like hits of music in an arrangement, a lot of engineers and producers will use that ga as just like an emphasis. And so that's where that comes from. It's kind of studio speech.
Come on, this is fantastic.
Yep, good stuff. Because when you're trying to describe a part, you know what I mean? Well, what do you vocalize? So that and I've heard that before, working in studios here and there. I've heard engineers use that just to denote like what part they're talking about. You know what I mean? To just vocalize a piece of rhythm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and
Fantastic.
I feel like I agree with you 100%. I feel like Spoon, what they do is very, very well crafted and calculated, but the way that they record it sounds very off the cuff, and they do a really, really good job of making it sound, what's the word I'm looking for? Spontaneous, like really spontaneous, but it's absolutely, crafted with such precision and care. nothing on any of their songs feels loosey goosey by any means.
Right.
It's all very
tight.
well calculated. So
yeah, it's tight, and I'll say also it translates well to a live show.
Oh God, yeah, it does.
I don't know. There's some bands that you can look at and say they're a live band that puts out records, and there's some bands that you can look at that put out records, but they go out and they play them live. And I don't know which one Spoon is. Like, I could see it either way. They seem to represent their albums very well on stage, but their albums also sound like a band that loves working on things on stage. They complement each other really well in their live and recorded presence. So there's not a whole lot of bands that I would say that about, but they definitely kind of could go either way. I'd be interested to know if they think of themselves more as a band that loves to be out on the road and performing, because they do play a lot. When they're working, they're out there on the road. So I would think that maybe their recorded songs kind of are impacted by the live show, but it could just be cyclical. Yeah.
I feel like with them, it's probably pretty even. Obviously, they value that studio. They use it. They do stuff in the studio that you just simply can't replicate live.
Yeah.
So they do a lot of, whether it's, at the beginning of Don't You Ever, when he's like, Jim, record the talkback, and you're hearing the studio banter as part of the song.
Yeah.
You hear that they do a lot of stuff like that. Or just using effects that only work in a studio setting. But then they make it work live, and it translates. It's because it still comes across as so spontaneous and in the moment. So maybe that's just, maybe that's their songwriting process of going over a song again and again and again and again until it's perfect. The new song is actually a really good example of that, because it's so precise in its execution, but it sounds like a garage rock band that is just barely holding it together. You know what I mean? Like, and the energy of that is just perfection.
Yeah.
But
so this was my entry point though, because I'm working in an office and we're listening to music, and I had a coworker who just had this album on. Like, he was obsessed with it. Yeah. Would play it. It was every day I heard this album for weeks. There was he had a cycle of 10 albums that he was really into or something. But it was so easy to fall into. Yeah. It's pop music. It's indie garage rock, but it's got a jangle to it, and it's indie pop. And
this album in particular is very accessible. Yeah. And I'm not using that in a negative connotation in any way, shape, or form. It's just got some really catchy hooks and some really great straightforward pop songs. It debuted at number 10 on the Billboard. So it was it was instantly very popular. Yeah. And then this is also when they started really, we're talking about that upward trajectory. And this is when they started doing late night shows, performing on Letterman, Conan O'Brien, and all that. They had a stint on Saturday Night Live at that time. So, songs like The Underdog, who doesn't love that song? You know what I mean? It's
so good. Cherry Bomb, Don't Make Me a Target. Yeah, there's so many good songs on that. And it's very bouncy and danceable as well. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. And it's not surprising that they really started to go into the stratosphere with this one. It was the right time for it, and they hit the late night circuit, which brings in a whole new audience. They hit Saturday Night Live, so where do you go from here? That's kind of the thing. Yeah, I don't know. There's an ongoing thing in my head with this band that it's another one where they've had moments. They've had huge moments especially for a rock band like that. But you think about the Decemberists, you think about the Shins, Modest Mouse, the other bands, Cake, that were also kind of popping at certain times, and it feels like it happened for Spoon at a weird time. I kind of wish that this album, like if things had slid forward a little bit, even though they had put out a bunch of stuff before that, if the timetable had just slid forward a year or two, if we might be having a different conversation with Brit being Julian Casablancas, like like having that level of notoriety, like people, like I said, like I was standing next to him at a show. He's a noticeable guy. I hope that people are mainly respectful, and that's part of why he wasn't getting inundated. But it's the same thing with James Mercer from the Shins, where I'm like, those bands had their moments.
Yeah.
But like, why they found their fandoms, so they'll always be able to tour on that. But I look at a band that I love, The National, who had a similar sort of trajectory, worked through that garage, Strokes, Vines, Hives era of things, and came out and grew as a band and have found their audience, and now Taylor Swift sings their songs. And so it's like, why don't we see that for Spoon as much? And I would wonder if that frustrates Britt a little bit, because he knows what he's got. They know their formula, and they know that it wins, and it's a solid one. But I kind of feel like this band should be, even though they've had their successes, should be even bigger than they are. But I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We got more things to talk about. This album this album just proves it to me. Like when I listen to the songwriting on this, I'm like, this is pop music. This could have been, if it had happened at the right time, could have been the Strokes' Last Night, or the Modest Mouth, all Float On. Like it just could have happened if it happened at the right time.
Yeah, and I mean, so that kind of being the time where they did start doing their late night talk show appearances and being on Saturday Night Live, which they haven't really done since. I feel like they're probably of the mind that, okay, we did that. It was cool for what it was, but like they never seem to be a band that retreads ground ever. Brit's really on the cutting edge of things, and he's just doing what he thinks is dope. And I think that's what's so great about it, is it just comes naturally to him, and he's just one of those naturally cool dudes. And he's just always going to do what he wants to do. And if that's popular or not, I feel like he probably doesn't even care. He's like, I'm going to do what I think is cool. And, I always try to, we try to keep it, on this podcast, for example, we'll talk about something that is, timeline wise, current, but we're going to talk about what we enjoy talking about, rather than just like, so-and-so artist has a new album out, let's talk about that, because that'll probably be cool when it's an artist we don't, we're not into. Yeah. So, I feel like when you're doing something that you're just naturally wanting to do because you think it's cool, that comes across. That, you can't feign that level of interest or that passion, if you want to call it that. And I think that, speaking on that, going into the next album, Transference, in 2010, it did debut at number 4, which is their, highest debuting album. Yeah. But I feel like that debuting that high on the charts is coming off of the buzz around the band from the success from the previous album. Because, that's when people talk about Spoon, that's typically not an album that they talk about. And even me being a huge fan, it took me a while to get into that album. Yeah. And I couldn't even really put my finger on why. And maybe it's because it's like, you listen to it and it's like, oh, it's not the same album. It's the same band and it sounds like the same band, but it's not as much a pop record. It's got a lot of their, we were joking about, songs that you could see in a TV show of a teenager crying in the hallway of their high school. And this album has a lot more of that side of Spoon on it. So it's a little bit more of a Twilight, kind of album. Yeah. Which I guess especially coming off of Gaga Gaga Ga, which is just bright, and you've got songs with horn sections, and you know what I mean? It's a lot more subdued.
It is.
And so even at the time when it first came out, it was almost a little bit of a disappointment because like, you know, what do you want? You want more of the previous album and
right.
bigger and better. And it was different. And, you know, now having had the time to digest it and really appreciate it, it is one of my favorite albums of theirs, but it took me a while to get there.
Yeah, I definitely remember falling off a little bit. Like I liked this enough, but it did not make me. It didn't solidify me as the Spoon fan. Like I was into the 2007 album, went back to Gimme Fiction, and was like, yeah, they're like now I like this band. Like now I get it. And then I got to this, and I was like, oh, we didn't lock it in. Like I
yeah, and it's weird.
Maybe I'm not here to stay. Yeah.
It feels that way at first, and maybe it's the lack of the you know, constant pop hooks, or just maybe not as danceable and you know, not as bright and exciting. But it's really it has so much heart to it, and there's a lot of really beautiful songs on the album. But I do feel like it take some time to digest and really get into it to appreciate it. And maybe that's why they're not necessarily considered in that same kind of stratosphere as the Shins and Modest Mouse and those kind of bands that you were talking about. Yeah. It kind of feels like they're there for me here locally, but that could very well simply be because I'm in Austin. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's hard for me to judge how they're perceived outside of Austin.
Yeah, I think that they are in that same pantheon. I think
I want them to be.
I think they should be Death Cab too. You know, I feel like Spoon should be at the same level. Like Britt and Ben Gibbard, both as performers and songwriters, I think are cut from different cloths, but of the same caliber and quality.
I would agree with that.
I feel like Death Cab had 2 or 3 of their big pop crossover things that have stuck, and I don't know if Spoon ever got that chance. I think that I'm trying to remember the years, but I want to say that Plans, which had, and Transatlanticism, which were the big 2 albums for Death Cab, were I think 2003, 2002, 2003, and then 2005. The Modest Mouse, Good News, was 2004. And so it's like Spoon had their pop success 2 years later, when maybe that's not when people were ready to hear that music anymore, you know? And then
I can see that.
The next album I missed entirely somehow. Like
really?
Did not. Yeah. So I knew about Divine Fits. I remember hearing that and being like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." But like, is he not in Spoon anymore? Yeah. Yeah. He just did a side project thing, and that was cool. Yeah.
No, they're great. I actually have I have the live album that they recorded at Third Man Records.
Oh, cool.
On vinyl. I picked it up locally here at some point relatively recently. I don't even remember, but within the past year. And that's probably one of my favorite live records to listen to. It's really cool. And definitely worth mentioning Divine Fits. They're an awesome band. And, you know, even the songs without Brit singing are great songs. And it's definitely a good band to get into, especially if you're a Spoon fan.
Yeah. And then, so I missed They Want My Soul somehow. I came back in at Hot Thoughts, and then I was like, oh man, I missed this great album, and went back and discovered. I mean, I'd heard Do You. I have to say, like, that song I think did get a bunch of radio play and did get a bunch of TV syncs and stuff. So
yeah, that was kind of the hit.
Yeah, it's a sort of a hit off of that album. You hear that and you're like, yeah, I've heard that in a bunch of places. But yeah, for some reason I missed this album entirely. But I've gone back and I rediscovered it, and it's great. Like it's
I love
up
it.
there for me. Yeah.
I feel like they it seemed like without retreading any ground, they did go back to that energy level from Ga 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 Ga. And it's got a lot of kind of new textures for the band. It's kind of like they kept some of that Twilight feeling, depth and darkness from Transference, but also with kind of that energy from the previous album, and without having to use a horn section to get there. But it's a great album. It got some amazing songs. It's hard to imagine that was all the way back in 2014. That was for some reason I feel like that album just came out a couple years ago, and I don't know if it's COVID that's throwing off my timeline sensors or what, but that was their 2014 album, released on Loma Vista after 5 records on Merge. So I don't know if it was just a certain number of records or if it was, I don't know what the story behind that is. But I also wonder if that may be one of the reasons why it's kind of one of their quote, like you said, you didn't even know about it. You know what I mean? I don't feel like it was, other than that one song that I feel like did get some attention. I don't feel like it was pushed as hard as it should have been.
Yeah, you have to build some momentum with a team to understand you and to understand how to sell and work and get the word out. But also that can burn out after a while. Maybe their Merge thing, and this is me speculating, but maybe their Merge thing, they felt like they had run its course, that they had their high highs, and at that point it was kind of they needed something else to light a new fire. Yeah, exactly. But then and so then they go back to Matador in 2017, and I remember, and again, maybe it was just where I was at mentally or what I was prepared for or whatever, but like I remember hearing the title track and being like, oh no, this is what I want. Like, this is so good. It's just like there's an urgency, there's a vibe to it. It feels like Spoon, but it's a little different. So it was like familiar, but it hit everything for me. I love this album. I think it's so good.
Well, it's a phenomenal album, and again, it kind of a running theme is it's still 100% Spoon. But they're playing with new textures. It's like, an artist, playing with a different color palette. You know what I mean? Yeah. They've got a lot more of the synthesizers going on and some pulsating, percussive sounding, electronic noises. And that's kind of new for them. But it never sounds forced or out of place. And I know there were some people that kind of were cold on that, but I got it. You know what I mean? I really got what they were doing. Yeah. And it really translates to live. Somehow that album, when you see those, there's a couple of really, really great YouTube videos actually of some professionally done live video of those performances from that time frame. And they crush these songs live. The energy is insane, even better than on the record. So Brit's got a presence, man. They absolutely knew what they were doing. And but with that said, and as much as I love the album and I love the direction that they went, and me, if I had to guess, I would probably have anticipated them, kind of doing more with the electronic stuff and kind of branching out a little bit and trying new textures. Hearing this new song, the kind of surprise, dropping that new song last week. Right. It is just straight rock and roll. It's guitars, bass, and drums, and it's probably the heaviest Spoon song I've ever heard. And I've probably heard all of them. There might be some little EPs here and there that I missed, but it's heavy. It's incredibly fun. and I'm so excited that they're doing a rock and roll album, and I can't wait to hear it. It's the first I was reading about it. Don't want to say it wrong, but they've come back and they're recording in Austin for the first time in quite a while.
Oh, okay.
So maybe there's some energy there that's bubbling, and that was part of it. But I'm just loving the really kind of buzzy, gritty sound that they've got going on. Still incredibly tight and incredibly well calculated, obviously, but it's kind of a different vibe for them, but it's still 100% Spoon. And I cannot I never pre-order albums. I don't buy records that I've never heard before, but I 100% I pre-ordered this album. You know, even if I hadn't heard the song, I would have pre-ordered it because it's Spoon. So
and you're gonna go see them live for sure. Yeah, like when
they are actually. I still haven't gotten to that point yet. I thought I was there, but then once Delta, hit the scene and, they're saying, then all the breakthrough cases and stuff like that. I was like, shoot. Well, live shows are going to have to wait. Yeah. And if, also A Giant Dog is playing next Friday in town, and I'm like, oh God, I want to go see them so bad. One of the best live, if Spoon is the number one Austin hometown hero, they're like the number two Austin hometown hero band. Right. So I really wanted to go see them, but I'm just not there yet. I don't feel comfortable with it yet. Yeah. But Spoon is doing a New Year's Eve show.
They are. The Moody, right? Yeah.
Yes. Which is the best sounding venue I've ever heard. And I've been to a lot of venues in different parts of the country. The Moody Theater is the best live sound by a wide margin too. Yeah. And not even where it's like, oh, this is acceptable. 'Cause most places it's like, oh, I can hear the individual instruments and it's not, grossly out of, mix, and there's, there's no feedback every 15 seconds. But how they have that set up or what it is, but that room sounds incredible. Yeah. So I hope I can, I don't know. You know what? I can probably get a booster by then. Cause you have to wait 6 months, right? I think
so. Yeah.
So I'll be able to get my booster next month. So maybe, by then they'll probably be sold out.
I'm looking right now. Yeah. It looks like $69-$70 right now, but
I mean, that's worth it though.
Yeah, no, I'm saying maybe
they're still available.
Just sell them, I think. Yeah.
I wonder if it's because of COVID.
Yeah, it looks like balcony seats.
I'd be okay with balcony for that show.
Yeah.
Because that's a smaller venue. When you think balcony, this is not a balcony at an arena where you're, a football field away from the artist. It's a pretty shallow theater.
Yeah, this isn't peer pressure, but it's it might be worth it. I think if you're gonna break your quarantine, your concert quarantine, a New Year's Spoon show in Austin is probably a great way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that might have to happen. I'm gonna consider it.
You gotta think about it.
The booster is gonna help though. I'm thinking about that. But anyway, so the hardest cut is the new song, came out just a couple days ago on the 28th. The new album comes out February 11th. It's titled Lucifer on the Sofa.
So good.
Which I don't know what that means, but it's really fun to say. There's a song on the album titled that, so we'll probably learn what that means once we can listen to the song. Yeah,
for sure. I feel like we're running out of time. I don't know if we're going to be able to sit here because I feel like we'd be debating which is our number one or two or whatever here. So I don't know if we have time to do all that. I'll say, obviously, like, for me, if it wasn't already, clear, like, Gaga 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 is my number one for sure. Like, that and Gimme Fiction is what Spoon is to me. So I feel like those would be my one and two. Everything else can kind of fill in from there. I don't know if there's something that stands out for you as the top or top two that you probably represent Spoon to you, or what your favorite iteration of Spoon is.
It's really hard. I have such
Yeah.
a hard time ranking albums of bands that I love anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, it's even more difficult for me with Spoon. Favorites, I am definitely going They Want My Soul and Girls Can Tell probably get the most plays.
Most play.
If we're just
Okay.
talking about total plays. But
Yeah.
man, but albums like Hot Thoughts and Transference and Ga 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 and Gimme Fiction, like those are like right up there with them. Like it would be so close that I feel like it'd be unfair to try to rank them. I know we talked about trying to do a ranking thing, but
Yeah.
I don't think I can do it. Like
Yeah.
even if we did have the time, it would be splitting hairs. And there's
They
no
want so, but you're saying They Want My Soul would be right up there, like it's that
yes.
it's that high up. Wow. Okay, I need to spend.
Absolutely.
I like that album. I've gone back to it. I feel like I probably need to spend a little more time with it though.
It's like I loved that album the first time that I heard it, but I appreciate it to the same degree as I appreciate an album that you have to listen to 10 times before it clicks with you.
All right,
Like
cool.
it's got that instant appeal, but it's also really deep for me at the same time. So it's more cerebral than a lot of their stuff that came before that. But it still also has it's like they married everything that they've done prior so well, but in one album with like
Right.
they've got kind of the darker Twilight feel of Transference with the pure pop of Ga 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 with the beautiful marriage of different textures from Gimme Fiction and the sparseness of Kill the Moonlight. It's like they took everything from their previous 5 albums and congealed it into They Want My Soul.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
I gotta spend time with it. I know some of the songs on it. I've listened to it a few times, but now that's my homework now.
Yeah, for sure. The real homework is going back and listening to Series of Sneaks.
Yeah.
And then be like, and then kind of going from that to be like, wow, like the whole progression of going from that to all the way through They Want My Soul and Hot Thoughts and then to the new song. It's a trip.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm excited for it. Yeah, I'm excited for the new music.
I'm excited. I'm actually kind of upset that I have to wait all the way till February.
Right. I'm sure we'll hear more before that. Yeah.
And I'm sure if I were to go see them, I'll get some new material there as
Right.
well. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. We'll see. All right, man. This was so much fun talking about one of my favorite bands, and I can't think of a better person to have had this discussion with. So thanks so much, man.
Yeah,
for
this was great.
always, being the really just the voice of reason in this podcast. It's like I get overly excited and crazy about stuff, and I like your sensible way of seeing things and talking things through. So I just appreciate
I like
you,
excitement. I like excitement right back at you.
man. Cool. All right. Well, again, thanks for listening to Retro Groove. We are a part of the RetroLogic Network. Check out the website, retrologic.games, for social links, merch, community, and more. And we'll see you next time.